Hey everybody, welcome back to our channel. Today we are here with Mr. Larry Hoffman. He is quite the experienced investor, started as a flipper, I believe, and made his transition into mortgage note investing. So we're here to gather some insight from Larry today. Larry, how you doing?
Hey, good, Brian. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate that.
Of course, of course. So just to start off, give us just a brief introduction into who you are and how you became a note investor.
Yeah, my God, I started investing in real estate back in 2006.
Mhm.
I actually bought the Carlton Sheets course. I don't know how old you are, but I'm 55.
Okay.
So back in the 90s, there was a gentleman by the name of Carlton Sheets, and so he would have this info commercial that would run constantly, throughout the day, but more specifically at night,
Mhm.
toting real estate investing. So I bought that course. I think I bought that course in 93, 96. I think it was like 93. Sat on my shelf for years. I literally didn't do anything until about 2004.
Mm.
And and then I became for my company LJH Investment back in 2006. Started out rehabbing houses, and even with the course, you don't learn, and it's it's really like on the job training is what is when you really learn. And so started out in 2006. Started out small. I eventually got up to rehabbing about 10 houses a month, and then I went for my 11th loan from a bank that I was buying a lot of properties from. And he was the president of the bank. He goes, Larry, we can't loan you anymore, because of whole the debt to income ratio and stuff like that. And then that's when I eventually found private money, using private money in my real estate business. And doing the private money took my investment career to a whole nother level. That's where I was rehabbing anywhere between 5 to 8 houses a month. And so I would rehab them. Oftentimes, I would, like if I was doing between 5 to 8, I would keep the ones that I wanted to rehab, and then I would flip the other ones. Or, I would try to do like a work for equity program on them. I mean, you name it, I've done it, from short sales to lease options, the subject twos. I've owned multi-unit buildings, single family homes. Um, and then unfortunately, I kind of like took my eye off the ball, so to speak, and the economy tanked. And then at that time, I wasn't really borrowing private money. I was trying to, when I was borrowing the private money, I would pull that money out, or I'm sorry, I would go and get a loan and pay off my private investors. Well, when the economy tanked, I had about 15 loans at the time that uh, when it tanked, the economy tanked, and then or I'm sorry, the housing market tanked, and then the economy tanked. And so I had 15, 20 houses where, I was making payments on, because, the tenants weren't making payments.
Mhm.
So they were losing their jobs. And then I had an obligation to the bank. I mean, my monthly payment, my outgo was anywhere between like 40 to $60,000 a month. It was
Whoa.
just, yeah. And so that dwindled my bank account. I was able to keep it going. And then I had properties that went into foreclosure, believe it or not. I never lost my personal home, but my investment properties I lost. I was still able to retain quite a bit of them. And so with that, unfortunately, with that, I went through a divorce, and the whole taste of real estate just kind of like left a sour taste in my mouth, just because I associated that with losing my marriage, and I just didn't really want to do anything. But at the same time, I would flip a property here, flip a property there, rehab it. I just never had the like the zeal that I had for it at once, like I once did.
Mhm.
I mean, I would eat, sleep real estate, right? And I would be up to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, doing stuff with it. And then I eventually found mortgage notes. It was funny because my second property, or I'm sorry, my first property that I bought here on Queen City Avenue here in Cincinnati, I actually took back a second mortgage. And I wish to God I would know then what I know now with mortgage notes. I would 1,000,000% structure that deal 100% differently than the way that I did, right? So, like I said, I eventually just found my way into like the mortgage notes. I knew about them, and I just really delved into them and just learned everything I could
About what
on
year
them.
was that?
Oh my God, that was about 2010,
Oh,
2009, 2010. Yeah.
wow. Okay. So you've been at it for a minute.
Yeah, I've been doing it for a little while now. And then, and the funny thing is um, I'll still look at property with the mind of taking it back and, like either fixing it, or more specifically, just like this work for equity program where, I take them back. I don't do anything that towards the later part of it. I was taking them back and I wasn't doing anything to them. I would just, get them under contract, buy them, and then offer owner financing, and then allow the new buyer to come in. Because oftentimes, buyers, they have pretty bad credit. And
mhm.
they can't get anything, but they want the opportunity to have the house. Where that's where I work with them, to actually get them in that house, and they would put their sweat equity into it in exchange for a lower price, and then me seller financing it for them. But like I said, but ultimately, I made the switch in the mortgage notes, and I haven't really looked back.
So one of the things that I talk to flippers about when I meet them is kind of how you go through that process of finding the property, buying it, doing rehab, dealing with your contractors and stuff. And obviously there are different ways to structure a flip deal,
Mhm.
but a lot of times people, they want to do the repair and then they want to sell the property, at whatever cost they can get. But when you do it that way, more often than not, you get paid one time. You know,
Yep,
and so I kind of talked to flippers about creating a residual kind of even using notes as a secondary strategy,
yep,
or maybe, if you make 100K on a flip, pocket half of it and put the other half into a note so that that same deal is paying
yep.
you over time. Has switching to notes, has it affected your time management, your stress level, just that recurring income versus getting paid on one flip and then having to do another one? What was
Oh
that?
yeah, yeah. That's a good question. Very much so, because um, with the mortgage notes, I mean, you still have to manage, like the servicers. You still have to check in to make sure that you know things are going as planned. People are still making the payments like they need be. But I can tell you, it was a lot of headaches for me back when I was doing when I had a lot of the rentals, even with the lease options that I was doing. I mean, I was surprised, the amount of money that I would get down on a lease option. So I pitched it as a homeowners and training program, but they still had the mindset that it's a rental, right? So they would, even though it says it in the contract, you are responsible for repairs, maintenance, blah 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 on this property. They would still call me. Um, but and that's the thing that I found with switching over to mortgage notes, that the borrower, they don't have that mindset that they know that they own that property. Contract for deeds are a little different, just because some borrowers still see themselves as, I'm just renting the property, but I don't get the calls like I once was, and I owned a lot of rentals. I owned a lot of property at one time. And I can just tell you, my stress level is way, 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 way lower with mortgage notes than it is with owning rentals.
That's awesome. Were you able to convert anybody that you were flipping with to notes?
No, but I've had conversations where, in some of the Facebook forum groups that I belong, I just had conversations on like, hey, you're basically, if you're a flipper, you're leaving money out on the table, as opposed to just trying to flip the money, flip the property, and get that initial cash hit, as opposed to maybe buying it and then offering some type of seller financing, to where you could sell like a partial, or you could sell the whole note to, preferably like a partial, right? So if you're into it at the margins, need to be into for like what you bought it for and what you're trying to make on top of it. If you sell that partial, and if it works out for the yield for the other investor, then that's where I tell them it makes more sense for you, the flipper, to do it that way. If you can recapitalize your investment, and make, like $10,000 to $15,000 on top of it, why not sell, like 180, payments of that 360 mortgage, 360 payment mortgage, and then the 181st payment comes back to you. I'm like, it's just you've left all that money on the table.
Hmm.
So unfortunately, I have not been able to convert somebody as of yet, but I do have a lot of conversations with people about it.
Okay. Well, hey, it
Yeah.
takes some people longer to catch on than others.
Yep.
Something.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Brian. With the whole mortgage notes, it's a different beast because you investors think that you own that property. You do not own that property, right? And so it's a different mind shift.
I get that question a lot.
Yeah.
That question a whole lot. Cool. So what is your main objective when you're pursuing note deals or your buy bots? Do you like first, seconds, performing, non-performing? What are you into?
Yep. I like first performing mortgages. I used to say, I buy across the United across the U.S., but there are a lot of states that I do stay out of, like Kentucky, New York, New Jersey. I don't buy anything in Illinois, California. It depends, just because some parts of California, it's just prices in California are just outrageous, right? And I do look for performing first mortgages. I don't buy second mortgages. I do buy non-performing mortgages. I buy a lot of non-performing mortgages because the goal for me is to rehab the borrower and not the property. So basically, what I try to do is I don't have the intention to take that property back. I don't want that property. I want to work with the person that's in the property. They show signs that they want to stay in that property. I will do everything I can to keep them in that property where and I'm able to make, I mean, it's an investment for
Yeah.
me, right? So I'm trying to make the yield that I want to make. And that's why, when you go and you analyze these deals, that's why when you analyze it, that it comes down to numbers, right? So if the numbers work out and if I'm able to buy that non-performing note with the mindset that I may be able to get them to reperform, and then once I get them to reperform, I just add it to my portfolio.
Got you. So you mentioned that you look for signs that the borrower really wants to stay in the property. What is it that they can show you to say, okay, this is somebody that I can work with? Is it history with the servicer? Is it, they're trying to
Yep.
keep up on payments? What are you looking for?
Yep, all of that. Like if they the big thing, right, is not ghosting the servicing company, not burying your head in the sand, not avoiding phone calls when the servicer calls you, or if they've attempted to make a payment within like the last 13, 15, 16 months, something, right? If they're trying to work it out, or if I see something on um, the servicing logs where like the servicer says, oh, I've attempted to reach out to this, and they want to work it out. I mean, I bought one in oh god, it's Georgia, where I was literally like the fourth or fifth person that bought this note, and it was a non-performing note, and I bought it, and it's crazy. I was literally the only one that reached out to him, my servicer, and I gave the servicer instructions. Hey, let's just go ahead and try to get him reforming. Let's just I don't want to foreclose. I'll do everything I possibly can to help him. And like I said, I was the fourth. I think I was the fourth person, and so struck up that conversation, made a loan modification, and he's been paying ever since. And the funny thing is this, I instructed the servicer to go ahead and give him my number, and so he calls me, and so we'll just sit there and just like just chew the fat, and you typically don't have those interactions with your borrower, but this was a circumstance where we more or less like develop a friendship over it, and it just makes me feel good knowing that I kept him in that property, and he's been making payments. He's done everything that he said he was going to do regarding that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, sometimes people just need a chance.
Yep.
That's one thing that I tell people I like about note investing. Obviously, I'm new to the industry, but the fact that you can take a more personalized approach to your borrowers
Yep.
versus being an institution where it's like, hey, pay me or give me
Yeah.
X. because life happens. We go through
Yep.
things, and sometimes people just need a shot. So that's awesome. I'm glad that worked out for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Bad things happen to good people. And just having to be on that other side of that fence where I had those properties going to foreclosure,
Hmm.
I thank God it wasn't my personal one. It was my investments, but still, I took that, personally, right? Because I'm the one that signed for it. I'm the one that, my company signed for it. And I just know what it feels like to be on the opposite side of the fence, especially in a foreclosure situation.
Yeah, that's valuable. So given your experience, where do you see the note investing space going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I do know that Fannie Mae, they just allocated like what, almost a couple $1 million for buying bad debt. So I think there's going to be, that's an indicator that I think there's going to be a slew of non-performing notes,
Hmm.
creeping up here. I know that they're anticipating a lot of commercial properties going to foreclosure, so that could be an opportunity for somebody. Um, I did a couple of commercial deals, but ultimately just sidestepped it and just went into residential.
Hmm.
But if this truly is going that way, I may get back into buying or commercial notes. But I do see an uptick, with non-performing notes coming within the next year.
Okay. And when you say commercial, are you talking like storefront commercial or like large multifamily?
Yeah, multifamily and storefront.
Okay. So what are the benefits of investing in a commercial note versus a residential? Is it just larger?
Well, yeah, I think commercial is, it's one of those things where regardless of whatever note you invest in, residential or commercial, are you prepared to own that commercial building?
Right.
Because ultimately, that real estate is what I'm more interested in. I may also be interested in the business because over the last year and a half, 2 years, I've been looking at buying businesses so that way I can, get those and then take that cash flow and buy more notes with it. So that way I'm compounding everything. Um, so that's why, more specifically, when I read this article that Fannie Mae is, allocating about 1.9 to $2 million or 2 billion with buying these, it's like, the wheels started ticking.
Nice. That's funny you say that. That's my objective too, is to
Okay.
kind of use the notes as a foundation and then go on to buy businesses and kind of
Yep.
invest. Before I got into notes, I tried to buy a laundromat. So that's kind of the path that I was on and
Okay.
just kind of ended up in this space. But I think that's a great opportunity to, especially buy something that's already up and running, be able to
Yep.
add value, scale it or whatever. So that's awesome.
Yep. 100%.
That's awesome. So, do you use in your process any sort of AI tools to help you with maybe due diligence or follow up, or you just kind of do it all? I mean, you've been in
I,
it 15 years, you got a system.
yeah, I do now. I do have a virtual assistant that works for me. She's been with me, God, since two, I mean, early on. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been using her for years. So she helps me with like the emails, entering stuff into my contact relationship database, follow up. She does help me with due diligence to an extent, but it's primarily me that does the due diligence. I have not used AI to do any due diligence. I know that's kind of like one in like one of my to dos is to feed in like several deals that that I've done
Hmm.
and throw that into like ChatGPT or Gemini to let it evaluate it and kind of see if it picks up on the same things that I picked up on. But
Nice.
no, the answer to your question is no. I'm not using AI to do any of
Okay.
that.
Cool, cool. Yeah, that's something I'm trying to figure out how to implement in my own strategy. So I love to
Okay.
kind of bring that up. Um, having the benefit of being again relatively new to it is like, okay, I can kind of build with that and grow with it versus,
Yep.
when you have a certain amount of experience and like, hey, this works for me, this is my
Yep.
system, where you don't necessarily have to make that shift. So that's awesome.
Yep.
Whatever works. Cool.
Yeah, and that's the thing because it's like I have a standard operating procedure basically. So when I get something, if I can't get to it, then I send it over to my VA, and then she does it. And then we just basically just have little checks and balances where, and that's where some of the things that I am trying to do is I am trying to automate some of that
Hmm.
within using like Twilio to, to enter in all my information. And then when you move it to a different bucket,
Hmm.
it'll automatically, like send out, because I use Bag Baldwin Advisory Group, Dickie Baldwin, for all of my, like the BPOs and the titles. So it'd just be kind of nice as if, if one of us drags it over, it'll just send out an email. But right now, that's all manual, right? We just have a sheet we use, and we just basically fill it in. And then when we get to the point where, it's like BPO title, send email to Dickie Baldwin, right? And then it's like checked it, and then email sent out.
Oh, yeah, that's sweet. Hey, whatever you can, whatever takes less off your plate or more off your plate.
Yep.
Yes, right. That's awesome. So, you do educate others on how to get into node investing, correct?
I do. I do offer a mentoring class, or structure. It's basically like a 10-week program.
Hmm.
I just take you from soup to nuts on how to invest in mortgages, and performing, non-performing. And then I also, more specifically as well, is I go into private money, how to find private money, how to cultivate that relationship, how to avoid like the SEC, with just outright soliciting. If you're doing like a fund, if you don't have a fund, or if you're just strictly doing a JV type of arrangements, there are a lot of nuances that you have to 100% be aware of, because if you're not, it could land you, I wouldn't say in jail, but definitely with a slap on the wrist, right? If you do things the wrong way.
Okay. And on that topic, before we wrap up, regarding private money, how do you find that your lenders receive the idea of note investing? Because I find myself, obviously it's an industry that a lot of people are not familiar with. Versus
Mhm.
you go to somebody and say, "Hey, I have a multifamily or whatever," they kind of heard of that before. So,
Yep.
when you introduce people to what note investing is and what the benefits are, how do your potential lenders receive that?
Well, and that's the thing. A lot of people have this misconception that as soon as you reach out to this person with, you can have the best things since sliced bread, right? If they're not comfortable with you,
Hmm.
they're not gonna invest with you, right? So, and what I found is it's just constant educating, the private investor. So essentially, what I do is, I go after it. I'll tell you that you can look up on the county's website people who invested with self-directed IRAs, and just send out letters to them, like a letter, and also a postcard. And the thing is just consistently being in front of them, inviting them. I also do luncheons. I invite people to luncheons. I pay for the lunch. You just sit down there. I go through my spiel, and you get a free lunch out of it. If it's fine, if you want to invest, that's cool. If not, that's cool too. I never have people invest on the deal. I always wait at least, it's typically like SEC, a 30-day cooling off. I like to do 60 days, so that way, I'm not pitching anything. At least I've had at least 3 to 4 contacts with them. So that way I'm not pitching them a deal, right? And they're basically, coming to me. And so, you just cultivate that relationship with them. Doing a big thing is doing deal case studies, having a YouTube channel, having a TikTok channel, and also when these private investors do reach out to you, you have to have a way to capture their email address, right? Their contact information, having some type of CRM, and that way you just follow up with them. So that way they see the deals that you're doing, um, and then I think it finally clicks with them, because notes, with notes, it's backed by real estate, right? So if something, I always tell my private investors, the only thing that I can 100% guarantee is my due diligence. My
Hmm.
due diligence, I mean, I do a lot of due diligence. So that way, it's a sound investment. But, I can't foresee the future. If I could, I'd be doing something else. Um, it's investing, right? Things happen. And that's the other thing that I always tell my investors. Uh, I always ask them, if I come to you 6 months from now and I tell you I lost your money, what is that going to mean? Is it going to mean you're going to be, destitute? Are you going to be out on the street? Your daughter's not going to be able to go to college? It's it's one of those things where you don't want to take somebody's last money in hopes, that they're thinking that they're going to strike it big. And it's not like that. This literally is a get rich slow. You know, it's, I equate it just like baseball, man. You have base hits,
Hmm.
right? Get on base, get on base, get on base. And then occasionally you'll hit a home run. And then, it's just get on base, get on base, and get on base. But the whole thing, though, with coming back to the private lenders, it's they have to have a personal relationship. They're investing in you,
Hmm.
right? And so once you have that, then yeah, it's they'll people will loan you money.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Larry, thank you for your insight. I learned. I'm sure anybody who watches this interview will learn plenty from this. Where can people find you if they want to contact you or watch your content?
Yeah, they can. I got my information right there
Mhm.
at, like my website, ljhinvestments.com. Or if you want to schedule a 30-minute call, talk with larryhoffman.com. And, oftentimes I have people take me up on the, 30 minutes, and it winds up being an hour just because there's a lot of questions and things like that. But yeah, or you can just give me a call, shoot me a text, 513-301-1468.
Fantastic, fantastic. Larry, thank you for your time. Best of luck with your investments and your future endeavors. Obviously, we'll remain in contact, and I'll keep watching. I'll keep following
Awesome, Brian. I appreciate it, man.
for sure. All right, enjoy the rest of your day, and I appreciate your time.
You too. Thanks.
Sure thing.